Usually when I write scripts for videos, they're just plopped onto my notes app for reading later. However, if we're talking about a project I've always wanted to work on, we're talking years-long want here, I'll be fancy and break out the Word document software. The following video is, yeah. Enjoy! Action-packed. A feast for the eyes. Fun for everyone. Super Smash Bros. Has everything. Well, almost everything. In most fighting games, before the final boss or the bonus stage, the player would face a rival of sorts. Not a challenger at the arcade, not a real-life human being, but something more of a true foil. A rival. Whether it's a power-based reason, or a story-based reason, or just because, the character you've been playing as through your run has someone who's also powered through most of the roster, and also has plans to power through you. But there's just something that makes them think about fighting you instead of the fight just starting then and there. And this usually ends up making for great character development on both ends. These interactions are already great in other fighting games within one franchise, but it gets so much better with crossovers. For as meh as most people thought Marvel Infinite was, the story mode was amazing for me because instead of small dialogues before the fights, we got a bunch of zany, crossover-y goodness with fan service aplenty. On the flip side, Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe's story mode actually brings these characters together in a somewhat grounded way that's actually believable, and in both universes, instead of, oh no, giant singularity that rips apart time and space, or they meet in a central area where they fight, don't get me wrong, it's still fan service aplenty. With that said, I'm also going to try and refrain from using the word fan service from here, as while I think there should be a line between fan service and character development, with crossovers that line gets omega blurry. There is one game, however, that absolutely knocks this rival system out of the park. One thing that PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale has over any crossover is their rival cutscenes. The story arc for every character is the oh no giant singularity that every one of the PlayStation poster people come to investigate. This leads into rivalries that range, my goodness. We have the years-awaited amazing interaction between Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank. We have the bonkers but still makes sense pair-up of Sly Cooper and Nathan Drake. And we have... just enjoy.
My ice cream cone. Stand aside. Pick that up and pay for it.
Don't get me wrong, with a system like this, with no repeats, we'll have matchups that make us shake our heads. Like, why is evil Cole McGrath fighting Fat Princess? Why is Colonel Radek fighting Sir Daniel? I feel like they went for the silly character fights evil grimdark character thing for most of these, more than finding better matchups for the characters themselves. I want to talk more about PlayStation All-Stars later. I remembered what day it was. Everyone is truly here. Before I go feral and start frothing at the mouth for the next installment of the Smash Brothers series, whatever that looks like, I wanted to give the biggest crossover in video games its due. We all talk about how it's nuts how Snake fights Steve, fights Sora, fights Luigi, but what does that mean story-wise? God, I'm a nerd. If there was a rival system, what would that look like? Well, I think I have the answer. This is the definitive... No. The ultimate Super Smash Bros. Rivals list. Let's start with the obvious. Mario vs. Sonic was the video game debate. Nintendo vs. Sega was the console war. As the Nintendo mascot, as Mr. Video Game, literally John Video Game, Mario could, in theory, be matched up with any other character in this and it'd work. Sure, but it'd be a crime to not match him up with a character that truly took some of his spotlight. While it could be said that the novelty has worn off since the peak reveal in Brawl and the many Olympic Games, it's an old testament that rings true and new, even over 3 decades later. the two most legendary swordsmen in video games. While never as system-selly as Mario vs. Sonic, and that's even debatable, it was still a recess debate of who was better. I mean, both had swords and were blonde, but okay, really, both were part of the most critically acclaimed games of their time. When official artwork of the two clashing swords is enough to make me, a stupid, dumb 19-year-old who's never played a Final Fantasy game, drop his jaw on the floor, you know it's another great rivalry on the list. Yes, I know, these two have met before, but it doesn't feel right having every rivalry be new. The Capcom vs. SNK games are some of the finest fighting games ever made, so seeing these two blonde boys duke it out again felt right. Having two boxers spar in the ring couldn't be more of a perfect matchup either. In the red corner, Little Mac, hailing from the Bronx with his overwhelming speed and power. In the blue corner, Min Min, hailing from the ramen bowl with her long-range variety of weapons and kicking. A close combat fighter versus the outiest of outboxers. I wanted to be more creative, but I couldn't be. Mega Man and Pac-Man are two of the main four of the main group in Smash 4, so going with anything that wasn't this was very wrong to me. Namco and Capcom have butted heads before in healthy competition, and their main mascots are more than merry to meet again. Speaking of Capcom mascots, we have Ryu from Streets here, a nomad, and very much one with his energy. I chose to pair him with Lucario, also a great fighter, one with his aura. Do you ever think of those matchups that just click? This is one of them for me. I can't really describe it. I feel like they would both be looking at each other, ready for a challenge.
Anime gun person.
Just kidding, but actually, no, not kidding. This really worked out well for me. Joker, as part of the Phantom Thieves, uses a mix of weaponry and style to take out his foes, but if you really want weaponry and style, you can't forget about Bayonetta, and they both have the bonus of being absolutely hated at one point. Not by other characters, but by the players.
Burb.
Okay, I won't do that for every matchup here, but I just wanted to bring you back to a time where it was before Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate. These two were, separately, dream additions to the roster, stuff we've only dreamed of seeing in Smash. This matchup isn't just because of the burb or because of the trailer imagery, it's also because these two do fight as a duo in wacky ways. But also, yeah, burb, whatever.
Galaxy brain.
Okay, I promise that's the last time for a bit. Both of these fighters have otherworldly psychic abilities. Both of these fighters were also revealed around the same time, releasing one after the other. Mewtwo and Lucas both have darker pasts attributing to their strength at present, which makes for a fantastic matchup. We come to the last of the Surefire matchups, and this one I'm gonna have to sell hard. We take Kirby, one of the most recognizable, familiar characters in video games, let alone in Smash. This guy could take on anyone's powers. But could he take on anyone? Kirby being the face of the story mode and being Mr. Sakurai's son puts him in high regard, which makes for a great case on how Kirby could fight the Mii Fighter, because the Mii Fighter could be anyone. A customizable character, specifically anyone the player chooses, would be the best matchup for Kirby. I think of the same energy of the Fighting Polygon team, the wireframes, the alloys. This could be anyone, and it's up to Kirby to fight them, as the star of the show here. We transition from the Surefires to the Shore? These are matchups that work, but aren't a true main event, I think. While they'd still be cool, they aren't decades-long rivalries or anything. Starting with two magic users and two protagonists of very, very long RPGs. They both have their charms as magic-wielding swordsmen in far-off fantasy lands. I can't really get more out of it than that. It's been a long while since I played Awakening, and I have yet to commit to a bajillion-hour Dragon Quest title. Never say never, though.
Ninjas.
This used to be in the higher category until I realized that ninjutsu is really the only link here. However, it works very well for both characters, in my opinion. Now this is a matchup. It's the match for the title of the vegan victor out of these two if I really wanted to be non-dairy cheesy. The piranha plant already seems like something out of a Pikmin game or a nice little cameo for a neat Pikmin boss or something. Ganondorf already has a bit of a Draculean vibe to him, a Dracula-type vibe. A villainous aura around him, with dark magic aplenty. If Simon Belmont could kill a vampire, Simon Belmont could definitely kill another warlock. This is one of those matchups where it's like, haha, I'm John, main character, and I've made it all this way to fight the final boss. The one, the only, who the hell are you? These villain switcheroos are very, very few and far between on this list, but in any other list, they'd make for great matchups. Before Ridley joined the fray and before the Pokemon trainer returned, Yoshi was to match up against Charizard. But no, Silly vs. Grimdark still stands, Scaly Edition. It's Dinosaur against, that. I tried really hard, really hard to let these two have matchups that weren't this one. But it still felt so right. Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda haven't really had the best kind of matchups if we went section by section. Hero against hero? Yeah, it's cool, but it's just hero versus hero. Villain versus villain? Cool, but still, to me, it's villain versus villain. However, it's different with princess versus princess. It just works. It's another unexplainable to me. Again, before Ultimate, I had Peach and Robin together and Zelda and Palutena together for lesser reasons than just this matchup working. So the more I think about it, I think it works the best. We have the future fighters here. One swordsman is from the future and one can see the future. It works, and it works well. I have never played Xenoblade enough to know if it can go further than that. I think it's just cool. Never say never. Two fighters with endless arsenals and a number of gadgets to save the day. This is teetering on Silly versus Grimdark, but I think it's hilarious that the thing linking these two are their gigantic numbers of weaponry. This was going to be Snake versus Cloud if I could get over the giggly overarching thought process. Snake and Inkling's another one that just works for me. Shoutouts to Electric Parrot 1 on Reddit years ago for giving me one that wasn't Snake versus Fox because funny. The two kings, big and chunky and can you tell I'm running out of steam a bit here? The trailer for K. Rool is the catalyst here. They're both tyrants of the lands they overlook. They're both high and mighty royalty, and well, they're probably both self-anointed. Let them fight. Both revered knights of their stories and also winged justice if I wanted to give it a title, but I think it still fits very well. Having 70 million swordsmen has its perks, I'll say. This one clicked the minute I started to think about Steve and Smash. How better to refer to the Minecraft villager than with Villager? They both use many things in their moveset, so this one's a standout in my opinion. Okay, I've put it off long enough. Before I get to the harder sell, I'll get these out of the way. These are the matchups that the most people will go, "What?" upon hearing. There's one more section after this, but bear with me as we trek through the matchups that I desperately tried to stretch. Two swordsmen. One a hero king, and the other destined to be a hero in many timelines apart from his own. That's it. That's all I got. The swordsman of the Fire Emblem and the sword duo of Xenoblade 2. Man, if Fi from Skyward Sword was a character, this would have worked so much better, but, I mean, where would Roy go then? Okay, that's cool, but then where would... Ice and Fire. Whew, a better matchup. Thank goodness. In all seriousness, I literally had these switched up a bit before where Roy fought Incineroar because Hot Boys and Ice Climber and Pyra and Mythra were both duos. But literally, as I was writing this script for a second draft, I felt the other characters work better. I just look, do you see how hard this is? With a game this large in scope and a system this rigid, we can't expect every matchup to be a winner. I'm thinking of the old arcade matchup here. Donkey Kong, one of the brutes of the arcade, pioneering video game fun at public places, and then that fun comes to the home, all for this doohickey. Big, sword, I guess. Chalk this one up to the trailer as well. I'm not playing the Radiant games anytime soon, but it still clicks, I think. Okay, whew, it's not all terrible matchups. Both Chrom and Riptor, Killer Instinct. Both Chrom and Richter have that charm to them as the bad boys in blue. Both are warriors in each their own right, and I thought these two would match up really well. Isabelle's very soft-spoken and comfy, very accommodating and all. Daisy's rough and tumble, loud and proud. They're also my partner's favorites, so whatever, it's my list, make your own. It used to be Diddy and Falco, but you'll see the bird brain later. Diddy's a baby when you really think about it in his DKC days. Pichu is Omega baby, and probably shouldn't belong on the battlefield, but I mean, sure, you know, let's move on. Okay, now we're really stretching. Growing up, playing Smash Melee, going on the internet, looking up Smash Melee, and hearing about Giga Bowser, close to a legend in my household because I never dared to play on anything but very easy, and reading the comments on a YouTube video and seeing that Jigglypuff could wipe the floor with Giga Bowser. Jigglypuff? Like, they're the worst character! What could they do to... And on that day, Christian learned what rest was. So that image, that rivalry, that picture in my head of Bowser being Omega pissed that this stupid thing could best him, that's the basis for my matchup of these two. This comes from way back in the N64 days where I matched these two up. I don't know, it felt right. I could be lame and say that Ness confuses Pikachu for an enemy, and Pikachu confuses Ness for a crappy Pokemon trainer or something, or... yeah, there's really no matchup that could be worse than this. Go back! Bring me back to Pikachu and Ness. I'd rather write those fanfics than these. Thank you, Blarg888 from years ago. Shoutouts to that creativity where I have none. Also, on the topic of Reddit, I did make a list for this, but just posted it on the Smash subreddit. And final shoutout to Very Bad with usernames on Reddit. You're adorable still, not me. I lost my adorable list years ago. Also, what's up? How you doing? I'm sorry. I'm not putting... A naive, growing good boy against a naive, growing bad boy. I can see this working out a bit. Okay, geez, now we're out of the hell zone. Here's a challenge I put for myself. These final matchups are the hard sells. One that I personally see working out, but may have to sell you on. Hear me out. Rosalina's my main, and I wanted to pair her up with Olimar at first because they were both space travelers and had others fight with them. Then at one point I wanted to pair her up with Pokemon Trainer since they were both commanders of other creatures when they fought. However, I felt that the Olimar Piranha Plant matchup worked well, and if I wanted to be honest, Pokemon Trainer and Rosalina and Luma would have been in the what category. Unlike this matchup. One of the most dastardly beings in space, this former Metroid Prime seemed to be the best matchup. The space connection's where I push deeper. Rosalina's master of all things space in the Mario continuity, and Dark Samus is a result of how that sort of travel can corrupt one, so their own ideologies work well against each other. Both of these children, if we're really thinking about it, born on an island, destined for greatness. Sora and Toon Link are both heavy magic users, though you'll not see much of it on Toon Link's side, in this game at least. And I thought it'd be fun nods towards Sora's unspoken representation. Toon Link? I thought it worked well. I've never played Three Houses, but I've read enough of the wiki to see how this fits. I've also watched the Sakurai Presents like you all did, and got sorta spoiled on how all this works like you all did. On paper, I'm just gonna say green hair, but on plastic, I really don't want to spoil the higher up connections, and I also don't want to spoil it for myself deeper. I do plan to play Three Houses at some point, so let's just say green hair, but if you know, you know. These two are both cocky flyboys who desperately want to go their own path, sort of the foils to each of their own on the front of the box counterparts. Their super cool attitudes I can see clashing very well. This is where Pokemon Trainer ended up, but I feel like it could fit with a scene of Wolf exploring space, finding out his next target is one of the Pokemon Trainer's Pokemon, and then, hijinks ensue. I feel like this works because of that edge, that little side of Silly vs. Grim. And win or lose up for debate, think about Squirtle head canonically kicking Wolf's ass. Right or wrong? Who cares? Funny? Definitely. This one, I don't really see them as enemies more than rivals, like they both want to test their limits or something. It goes deeper than they just, they both have gun, they're both heroes, legends in space, both with traumatic parental backstories and both fantastic in their fields. However, when Samus gets her power suit on, this is a rivalry as old as Pikachu and Ness. Both are human bounty hunters. That's all I got. But somehow, if you really think about it, it still kind of fits. I used to have Samus versus Olimar, but then you get to the problem I've had all this time. You think of a great matchup, and then think of another great one. My goal was to match up every character to where no one gets left behind, and lo and behold, I've done it. I've paired up every character in Super Smash Bros. Well, I did forget two people. I never said I hated Silly vs. Grim, I just hated when it was overdone or if better matchups were to exist. With that said, Kazuya, the epitome of main character not equal to good person in video games since the 1990s. The Papa of Patricide, if corruption was a fist, the harbinger of horror.
Luigi.
Don't tell me it can't fit, it already does. I love it. If you disagree, you let me know, you make your list. Even then, you let me know your single matchups, how they'd fit and fit well. Just know my list was with the intention of no one being unpaired, no one without a rival. Then again, this had to start from somewhere. And if you've been keeping up, really keeping up, props to you. Because we still have one more matchup to do. This is the matchup that inspired me to do this list. Picture it, Wario going on his way, munching garlic and all, when suddenly Wii Fit Trainer appears and starts to give Wario health tips. Wario gets, naturally, hecking ticked off and takes much offense to this, and that's when the fight starts. You could erase all the matchups I mentioned before this one. All of them, and I'd still be happy if we got one rival cutscene of these two characters. There, I did what Nintendo didn't. I've made the ultimate Super Smash Bros. Rivals list. To clarify, I'm still really happy. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is video games the video game. No jokes, this is the biggest crossover in video games. Now, This is the biggest crossover. I'm singing this game's praises, and I'm sure I still don't know how much effort went into making the impossible possible. It does what the best crossovers do. Everyone is here. Everyone. It's so beautiful. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate may just be my favorite game of all time. I mean, what? What did I just say? I mean, I mean, uh, if I really start to think about it, that's funny. When I really start to think about it,